sort of latitude. So, yeah. Okay. So today's event is going to be, we're going to go for an hour. I've got a bit of a problem with my co-host who is going to be, he's an oral surgeon who's done this licensing deal. Unfortunately, he doesn't want to participate too much because he doesn't want to be recorded, because his practice is actually up for sale right now. And he doesn't want any buyer to get in there and find out what he's done and how he's done it. But we're still going to record it and hold it for later and only give it out to people who have been on this call. So we've made sure that we're hoping that none of you are buyers of an oral surgery practice in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. So if that's the case, then we should be okay. So I'm going to now share my screen with you, and from time to time I'll jump back and keep bringing people in if I can. So so sharing now, and we'll get to where we're going to be. I'm hoping you can now, oh, no, that's not the right one. Sorry, I always get these sort of blips. Now we should have the right screen. If you can see my screen, it should have licensing your innovation. Can you see that? Can people give me just a quick nod on that to make sure that all right? Yeah, all good. Excellent. So I'll keep admitting people as we go, just to get ourselves where we need to be. You can hear me okay? Sound is good? Anybody want to just let me know? Okay, that's good. I've got some chat, all good. So let's get started, shall we? So I've got about an hour of presentation. I must apologise in advance. There's 3 particular slides that are very heavy on bullet points, lots of words. But what I didn't want to do is have 50 slides. I'd rather compacted it down to about less than 20. So we can go through this, and the whole idea is to impact you with a lot of information that's going to be beneficial. And some of this you absolutely need in order, if you're planning on your licensing journey and you don't know what you're going to do, I've got to give you all the pitfalls and everything else. So some of it is very heavy in words, and I like to stick to pictures, but and talk to the bullet points. But today we're really going to have to go a little bit more than that, if that's okay. So let's jump into this, shall we? So licensing your innovation. The question I have is licensing your best option. So let's see how we go with this. And what we want to cover today is the commercialization path to market as you understand it, or how the industry understands it. And then I want to flip that around a little bit and show you the gaps. And that will, by highlighting the way that this actually works, you'll see where the gaps are, and you'll understand why, in some cases where you've tried this before and not been able to get it, this is going to help you. After that, I'm going to walk through the IP licensing process as we do it. So you've got a very comprehensive understanding of step-by-step what the pros and cons are, etc. Once you've done that, the pros and cons, good and bad at this. Once you've done all of that, we're going to work into a case study. I picked one particular case study, and this case study was picked for a reason, because we started out in licensing. We went down the licensing route for pretty close to 2 or 3 months with just one client, and right at the death knell, they changed it. But the client was accepted it, and we were able to keep going. So as a result of that, we're going to show you why and how you need to be flexible, and why the one pitch will do everything you need. After that, we're going to help you understand whether or not this can work for your project. And if it can, we're going to show you some steps as to where to from here, so you don't get left alone. You can actually get help with this. Now, at the end of that, if you choose to take a journey with me, you get a free copy of my book there, or one of the books. You would just, if you logged in, registered for this program, and you got your onboarding kit today, you would get asked what book do you want, and we'll send it out to you. So we're all good for that. So from here, I want to now just trying to get my screen to change. Oops, I don't know what's happened there. Trying to see if I can, there we are. A little bit about me. I don't want to give too much because most of you have been on course with me before. I started out in 1983 right, with a program called the Telephone Accounting System. If you've ever checked into a hotel in the 80s and you got an account for all the phone calls you made, that was our software. We built that up from 83 to 87. The stock market crashed in October 87. For those of you with grey hair like me, you'll remember it. And we were in the process of licensing that around the world, but we ended up trade selling it to one of our licensees. They are a Japanese international company. They bought, when they purchased it, they stopped licensing it to others. They just kept it for themselves. So that was my very first innovation. My latest one is my cornerstone investor model for funding, which I showed last month. And we'll have a little bit of it if you need to see it. But that basically gets investment funds into an early stage commercialization project in 4 pitches or less. Now, I won't be showing that today, but we can go through that at a later time. You can appreciate, because I've worked since 2018, more than 50% of what I've been doing this with the individual inventors and small R&D teams. Most of the logos that they come up with are not relevant because you'll never know these as individual companies. So I need you to understand that what we're doing here is some of these companies are the major ones in our level 3 program. So if I can just get this thing to work, commercial path to market. I want to show you how I think that most of the industry or innovation industry thinks that the licensing process works. They start with an idea. They then go and get a patent on that idea. They look for funding. Once they've got some bit of funding, then they take their journey, which is either to scale their project or to license it. And at the end of that, they continue all the way through to they get to their patent expiry, and then they drop the project and move on to the next one. Now, I don't think that that's going to be in a model that's going to help too many people. And so I want to give you a far more comprehensive model that we use that will show you why that is so difficult. That no man's land between funding and licensing, people all get lost. They can never get to funding, or if they do, they can't get to licensing. And if they get there, they don't know what to do with it afterwards. We're going to show you how to make this as a business and make it work. So we start with the idea, but instead of taking you all the way through to your patent expiry, we only take you to pre-scale. That journey is called early stage commercialization, from ideation to pre-scale. That's it. So pre-scale is where we can put your project in front of venture capital, private equity funds and the likes, who would look at your project and say, if I can put 10 times the equity into this, can I get 100 times the output? If the answer is yes, they will make you an offer to share the growth, and therefore they give you more than just money. They give you access to markets. They give you their experience. They pretty much can build your business in minutes instead of months or years. So on the pre-scale, that is your early stage commercialization exit from our program. And that's all that we're interested in, getting you to a point where you have no more risk in your project and people want to invest in it to now take it to 10x your project. So from the idea, what do? We start with building you a commercial model. Unfortunately for most people, they believe their product has all the value, and I can tell you, the value is not in your product. The value is actually in your commercial model. And if you build that right, it's going to make a big difference for you in the future. Now, the commercial model has elements to it like proof of concept, market validation, pricing, costing, and sourcing. You need to know there's enough margin in this in the long term for all the layers of the distribution channels. Sales potential, that's not just the volume of sales, it's also how they'll go in there, what you're going to be doing, what's your pricing, what's your margin, everything involved in the project at the different levels of the commercial model. And once you've got all of that, you'll know pretty much, yes, the project is going to make money, or no, the project's not going to make money. And if it's going to make money, that's when you start looking at a patent. Anything before that sets a patent clock going, and it means that if you get to pre-scale before you've 12 months or beyond 12 months, you're going to have to pay for the patent out of your pocket. But if you get to pre-scale before the patent is due for extension, then the project itself will pay for the patent, not you. So what we do is we focus you on getting from patent stage to pre-scale using a path to market of one of four options. Now, you do all four, but we focus you on only one, because if we focus you on only one, as they say, a fox who chases many rabbits catches none. We want you to get one. And we focus on funding, distribution, licensing, or a trade sale. And today, we're all about the licensing. So if we just work through that for now, and you'll understand where we're going with it, and I'll keep pushing this if I can. So I want to introduce you now to licensing and how that works. These are very heavy slides for the next few, so my apologies in advance. Don't go to sleep. It's worth it. So what is licensing? We provide our rights to a third party, and that party they pay us a royalty for these rights, and they then make the product and distribute the product. The rates on those royalty rights vary based on exclusivity, on risk and territory, and some industries have higher, some have lower. It's really up to you how you see that. They require less investment from you because you're not doing all that work. There's the only ongoing cost for you is patenting and legal. You've got to defend your project. But why do we pick licensing? It's pretty easy. You don't have to fund your proof of concept or your marketing. You don't have to have production facilities or production skills. They're going to do all of that. All you're going to do is hand them a concept, and they're going to build on that. You don't hold any inventory. That's a big expense that people end up doing. I've had a project which I've got a case study in the program where we show somebody who spent $2.2 million on doing all of this without a market. And she was a great product, but was never going to recover. And we can show you that and talk about it some other time. But you also have less legal and financial risks if you do a licensing agreement, because you're not having to front all of that. Some of the legal risks you do face, because if somebody breaches your patent, the licensee is going to come back to you and say, we want you to litigate. They won't. And also gives you the right to focus on other new projects. So you get the opportunity to build your next chain of income by having several or many projects, one at a time, going out to licensing. And once you've done your licensing, you're no longer focused on them. You're doing your next project. That's always nice to have. But make no mistake, it doesn't give you everything that you would get if you were actually doing this project yourself. So I want to talk about common misconceptions about licensing. It's important to understand that there are plenty of those. Firstly, most people think licensing means giving up ownership. It doesn't. You still retain all your ownership and all your rights. All you've done is lend the rights to somebody for a contracted period. Licensing is not just for big companies. Plenty of small companies do it. We actually prefer small companies because we want to get somebody within the industry who already has the channel. They might not be the largest. Generally, they'd be the second or third largest in the market because these guys will try harder. You don't need a fully developed product to license. A lot of people think, I need to get this finished. I need to have some inventory. I need to have packaging. Not the case at all. I've had a situation where somebody's actually built what he considered a proof of concept out of an aluminium can. He spray painted the can. He photographed it from different angles, and that was his proof of concept. He presented that with his patent and got a license. So it can be done. Retailers will license your product directly. They actually won't. Most retailers will tell you, go to your to our distributors. If you find somebody who really likes your product, they'll introduce you to a distributor, but in most cases, they don't want to know you. People think that firms pay key money to start a license. That is very, very rare. I've had one instance that I can think of in the last 20 years, and that was a defence and aerospace project which ran for a 20-year and got renewed for another 20 years. And the key money was just 1 year in advance. So there was no cause to what he was going to produce. This guy just had to provide his product and not talk about it to other people, and the license fee was paid up front as part of a defence and aerospace contract. Licensing guarantees a steady income. It actually doesn't. It's up and down. It depends on how much, how you've done your licensing agreement, because if you haven't put in any provision for instructions for the company that you're licensing to market your product, they're just going to push alongside their existing products, and it could be that nothing ever happens. So you need to make sure that they don't catch and kill your product. It's a set and forget arrangement. It's not. You need to come in. Annually, we do some sort of audit process to know how many sales they've made, even though they're giving you a quarterly report. Sometimes those reports aren't accurate, and you need to come back in and say, we think it might be this. Can you give us a statement on this? And so there's a little bit of work involved in that. It's usually quarterly and annually. Every company wants the best ideas. That's not the case at all. Licensing firms only want projects that fit their current range or their product range, their current criteria, their current market segment. They're only aiming to satisfy one group of customers. And if your product is an A-B product, if I bought A, then I'm more likely to buy B as well. Then that's what they're looking for, something that would increase the average sale value rather than find another market. So it doesn't matter how good your product is, it's not going to fit everybody. People think that they have to have the same strategy in all territories. That's actually not the case. We've done multiple licensing, geographic on demographic. So you might have something that's good for automotive, and we might break it down for cars and also for commercial transport. We might also have it for caravans and RVs as a separate product. And because the channels don't mix each other, and therefore you can have separate licensing across those. And then you break it down geographically as well. So you have it for each region. So you might have 30 licenses across 5 countries, and that's quite legitimately done. Licensing is a once-only arrangement for 20 years. That's not the case. We generally do our licensing agreements for 5 years with a rollover for a subsequent life period until the patent expires. The one I'm going to show you today, it only had 9 years to run on the patent, and therefore we were selling up to 9 years with a rollover commercial clause to roll it over without IP protection. So what's the good? What's the bad? The pros and cons of this are pretty easy. Let's go through the pros so you understand what you're up for. Firstly, you can have multiple territories. That's going to reduce your risk if you have lots of different players in those territories. Sometimes people say, I want one licensee to have the world. That's always nice, but you've got all your eggs in one basket and you don't know how good they're promoting your product. And if you have 2 or more, then you can play one against each other. They're on a ratio of population. They're doing far more sales than you are. They're doing it this way. You're only doing it that way. Perhaps we can help you get your sales up for your territory. Long-term contracts, we do 5 years with rollovers for other 5 years. So you could do 4 lots of 5 years. You can get out in 5 years. They can get out in 5 years, but generally it would roll over. And in case like that, yes, long-term contracts, they're always nice. There's no marketing to set up, no channel setup costs. You're tapping directly into theirs. There's low startup, low maintenance, low ongoing costs for you. All you have to do really is police your license. There's no development. There's no, in terms of pre-production prototyping, designs, none of that. There's no production risk. You don't have to go out and buy equipment and hope that you bought the right equipment and molds and everything else that you need to produce this. We'll let someone else do that. You're free to focus on new projects. If you're a prolific inventor, and there's not too many inventors I've met that haven't got 4 or more projects in their minds, you're free to go and pull another project off the shelf and get that done at the same time, because that one now doesn't need your full-time attention. You can leverage on their marketing channels. If they're already established and they're selling $10 million a week in this particular channel, and they're going to introduce your product to it, and they already have shelf space in Walgreens or Boots or wherever we're talking on a supermarket or a pharmacy shelf, then that's going to get your product immediate sales. You can buy back from them. So if you want to stay in the business of doing what you're doing, you might say to them, we'll license it to you, but can I buy the rights for my little city? And can I actually buy your product when you finish it and rebrand it my product and sell it? In which case you actually can make more money. This actually happened in this project we're going to show you today. You don't need any proficiency in marketing. So you don't have to be a marketing genius. You don't have to be a legal scholar. All of this you're doing once and you're moving on from there. This is ideal for prolific inventors because it gets you freed up for other projects. Now, the cons on this, what are the bad things? You manage your patent breaches. So if people breach your patent, your licensee is going to turn to you and say, we want you to enforce this. And that's going to be a role where you have to put a different hat on. Now you're a law enforcer in some way, and you've got to go back in and make sure this all happens the way it should. Your income is delayed. Make no mistake about licensing. If it takes 6 months to do pre-production prototyping, proof of concept, market validation, packaging, setting up distribution channels, getting your product approvals, regulatory approvals, etc., then it's going to be 90 days in arrears. If your licensing agreement is for payments on 90 days of sales in arrears, then you're going to be waiting 9 months minimum plus whatever the terms are. So it's probably more like 12 months before you get paid on a license agreement. Now, you also need to maintain the relationship. You've always got to keep this relationship good. They are suppliers to you. They will not see the value in what you do. After you've done the deal, and the longer that goes for, the less they're going to value you. And particularly if they have a change of management, the new guys are going to say, well, why are we paying these guys a license fee for this? And we're making money on it, but why would we be paying license for it? We got that 5 years ago or whatever. So you've got to be careful of that as well. And they may not share openly with you. And I've had a case where we're calling this in one of our cohort groups the other day. We were talking about how one licensee came to us and said, we want you to police this patent. We've got somebody emerging who's building a similar product. We went to that company and said, are you building a similar product? Here's a cease and desist letter. And we've got the patent on this. And they said, who told you? We mentioned the company and they said, what are you talking about? They're buying from us. So our licensee was actually buying from them, as it turned out. So there you go, as well. So a great marketing, that's called, and it's quite common. The legal expenses to police your patent are going to be yours. You need to be on top of that. You can buy patent insurance, but it's very expensive. They might claim their improvements, and sometimes astute licensees will actually patent around your patent. So you can't use their end product because it would breach their patent. And so they lock you in as well, but you're locked in terms of price anyway. So what they want to do is get continuity. They may also underreport their sales. We call that grey marketing, where they build 50 products, they sell, they tell you about 30 and the other 20 go to different markets. They sometimes sell outside their territory and then can claim later, oh, well, somebody just bought a container loan. We didn't know where they were. They gave us a Seattle address and we've got the North American rights. We didn't know that they're going to then ship it offshore. So what can we do? That can happen. They also will brand their product as their own. I don't see this as a disadvantage at all. If they've got the brand presence, let them. It's going to be an advantage for you. So you're going to get less overall returns, but I see that as not a disadvantage because you're also getting far less risk in exchange for that. So the good and bad balances itself out in terms of licensing. I like the idea of licensing. Having said that, in most licensing projects that I start, we end up with either a distribution or a trade sale. Now, what can go wrong? I wanted to quickly just cover off a few points here because I think it's important that you understand that these don't always go right and you have to have an exit and there's a reason for that exit. Now, the photo I'm showing there is not actually, it's just the angle of the thing. The bridge wasn't built to a point where it wouldn't connect. So but I just thought I'd point that out. It's a great angle, great shot. Firstly, we've got to be aware of the due diligence. It's up to you to do your due diligence, and if you don't do that, you won't walk in to negotiate this with a full picture of what you can do. Having a terms of agreement to cover off every point you need is most important. You need a checklist to do this. We do that with what we call our elements of an agreement. So we never give someone a standard agreement and say, sign here. What we do is we say, at the end of our pitch, we say to them, our 12th slide on our 12-point pitch is where to from here. And in that, one of our bullet points is we're going to give you elements of the agreement in a few days based on our conversation today, and we will help you build a license agreement from there. People don't feel pressured about your license agreement, and then it won't end up with getting stuck in their legal department for 6 weeks or 3 months because somebody has to sign off on it if you do it the right way. There's usually minimum activity. We need to have that because if you don't, people will catch and kill your product, which I'll explain later. You have territory restrictions. They can be geographic and demographic, or geographic on demographic, so you can have both. There could be misfires on how much they think they can sell, and misfires on pricing. You find somebody, if you have 2 different licenses in 2 different territories, and somebody's selling 10,000 of your product for at the 80% of the price of the other guy, and the other guy's only selling 1,000, it's because of the price. You can show them, here's the demand to price. And if you adjust your price in accordance with what they're doing, you're probably going to increase your sales. That's good for you. It's probably going to be good for them, but might not be. So you have to show that. Catch and kill is where people take your product on. It's usually mostly with oil companies. They did it a lot with internal combustion engine improvements. Basically, over the last 50 years, they buy your product, buy the license to your product, and then put it on the shelf somewhere and never sell any, and they don't owe you anything unless there's a minimum set. So we talk about activity minima for that reason. IP protection and defence, it becomes your responsibility. I've talked about cash flow taking 9 months. It could be up to 12 months. Sometimes it could be longer if you've got to get FDA or TGA approvals for medical products, etc. If you don't have an exit option, sometimes that can affect everybody. In particular, first right of refusal both ways for them to buy you out. You need to be able to give them that so they can move on that if they need to. Now I want to talk about how we plan the licensing process. If I give that to you very quickly. Licensing is pretty easy. We start with our 10-4-1 process. So we look at the top 10 people across the commercial model at different layers of the commercial model, because some of them might be at different layers of that. And we're looking for the top 10 companies that have established channels and all the other leverages that we fit. And I'm going to show you what the leverages are a little bit later. And then we look at what their current products and services are and see what the compatibility is going to be. We want to know if they have their own established channels, because that's going to save you a lot of time and get your product into the market far quicker. We want to find out we want to list all our leverages and show them what the values are. Now, a leverage is something that you're going to offer to them that doesn't cost you any money. It doesn't cost you anything, but you're going to give it to them and it's going to be of value to them. And I'll give you a list of 14 of those in a while. We want to assess the commercial risks, in particular their commercial risks, because in the pitch, we want to give it back to them. Here's what we see as your risks, and this is why we think you should still go into this. So we want to build a compelling case for why they should take your project on and add it to their range of products at the moment. And then we also plan the approach. This is how we think you should get started. And here's the step-by-step guide. And this is why we think you can start earning money in 3, 6, or 9 or 12 months. We do our 12-point pitch. We do a 12-point pitch, which I'll explain to you in a while. It's almost the same for funding, for distribution, for licensing, or for trade sale. They don't change that much. And that sounds scary, but it's actually quite relevant because it's all about the commercial model and the leverages. We do our due diligence in licensing. We do it both ways. We give them a due diligence file on us, and we give them on the project and the product, but we also do our due diligence on them because we want to make sure that they'll stand up to what we want to do. If they can't, we're going to be in trouble. They're going to flounder, and we locked into a contract we have to get out of. That nobody wants to do that. We also want to do that elements of an agreement I talked about earlier. So in a 12-point pitch, where to from here, we want to give you elements of an agreement so you can build a licensing agreement that suits both parties. It'll be based on our conversation today. So you're adding everything in that you've talked about. You also we do look at 5-year agreements with a rollover clause for subsequent like periods. Usually they have to give 90 days notice. If they don't, then it rolls over and they've got their minimum if they're not pushing your product. And it's always performance-based. So what does that mean? Well, let's now switch this over to the case study and show you what it means for what it meant for Dr. Mark Tuffley here, who's an oral surgeon in Australia. I'll tell you a little bit about his product. It's called Base Jump Premix. That's what he called it. In fact, the unfortunate title that he gave the actual formulation was BJ7. And the license based around BJ7, which is iteration 7 of it. This product was a paste that he developed for wet wounds inside the mouth, for instance, where he could hasten healing, and it was rapidly hastening healing. It meant less pain for patients for longer periods. For shorter periods, sorry. It was a quicker discharge from hospital, which saved them a lot of money, saved their insurers a lot of money, but most importantly, it saved him a lot of effort. Very quickly, if I do a sidebar here, when you're a surgeon and you take visiting rights to a hospital or operating rights, as they're now called, you have to, every patient that you put into that hospital, you have to visit once a day while they're in that hospital. Now, you can designate or defer that to somebody of character, and it's usually the registrar of the hospital. You can ask him to do it. He would charge you $1,600 for 5 minutes, and he'll go out there, usually with a string of students, and say, how are you feeling today, Mrs. Jones? Here's your chart. Everything looks good. How's your pain levels? And he'll recommend up the meds, lower the meds. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. And off he goes. He charges for that. And if you're the surgeon, you have to pay him for that, unless you do it yourself, which means you're going to, if you have patients in there like oral surgeons have for 6 days, then you're going to be working all weekends, Saturdays and Sundays. So what he was able to do is minimise that by having his operation days Monday to Wednesday, discharging most of the people before the weekend, pay the registrar on the Friday, for the Saturday, sorry, and there was nobody there on Sundays. So it was great for him. He had a significant competitive advantage because he could offer far less in cost for people to do this operation because they were discharged in 3 or 4 days instead of 6. He had his product compounded locally by a compounding chemist in a pharmacy in downtown in his city that he was in. The chemist, when he played with this product, learned what it was about. He used it on he had mouth ulcers for 30 years. He tried it on himself and he realised this is a great product. It works extremely well. So what am I going to do with it? So I'll ask him. He asked, could I manufacture this and sell it as a mouth ulcer treatment? Mark didn't have a problem with that. This guy did it. It was all fresh product because Mark didn't have any, his TGA, FDA approvals, which you already had, did not add any preservatives into the product, which is probably an oversight, but still. And so what he was not able to do, he had to make this product fresh every 3 weeks. And so the chemist was compounding it for him and also making a little bit extra and selling it and giving him a license fee for it. So the big question that Mark came to me with was, could he release it as a mouth ulcer cure and not affect his current market? He specifically didn't want his competitors to buy this product. His competitors were oral surgeons with visiting rights in 3 hospitals in the city he was in, and that represented 6 people. So that's what his restriction was. So doesn't sound much, pretty easy. How did we do that? Well, we did it with our 10-4-1 process. I talked about top 10 getting 4 people where we measured their leverages to know what it was worth to those, picked those 4, we did our pitch, got one, did the first pitch, we got an OEM to take the deal on. They changed the deal at the last minute, but it was still acceptable to everybody. We pitched on a specific application, which was mouth ulcers, which was not Mark's application. These guys immediately asked, what do you use it for? They realised they had other applications. They were testing it well before they did the deal, so they had other products they could use it for. He had requested competitor protection, so he wanted what we call a licensing carve-out. So they would have unfettered rights in perpetuity globally, except for his little corner of the earth for his range of products for his particular market demographic. So we calculated the leverages on our top 10 to get our 4. Once we got that, we had it all set up. We knew exactly where we were going. We knew what it was worth to them, and I'll show you how we did that. We knew what the non-cash benefits were going to be for everybody. We had the script and the pitch deck. He had it prepared by me, and I also had, because we dealt with this client, the licensee before, with another project which I did in Dallas. They were based in Chicago, and when we did the Dallas deal, the guy that helped us with that was actually the guy that came in to invest in the Dallas project, and he'd already done a deal worth $380 million with that same company out of Chicago. So I got introduced to them, and as a result, I was able to leverage and use that deal. We did our 12-point pitch only on one prospect. So we only did it for the 4 we measured to make sure we had the top 4, and then we only did it for one. That pitch worked. So he had his case studies, he had his TGA and FDA approvals, he had his due diligence file, everything ready to go. So when we sat down with them and they said, yes, we're good to go, he was able to slide that across the table and say, let's get started. Here, where to from here? This is how we start our due diligence. So very important that he had everything, well-oiled machine. He knew exactly what he's going to do, but it still went off the rails, but in a nice way. So let me just go through his 12-point pitch that he did. We do 12-point slides in 30 minutes. That's our licensing deal. We're focusing on licensing. The elements of it, it's synergy with their products. We had looked at all of their products on the shelf. In pharmacies, we also looked at their prescription products, and we'd shown exactly where this would fit. We talked about their leverages. We talked about the commercial model, their risks, their novelty in terms of how they could sustain this as a competitive advantage over others, and their current product range. We showed them how they could get protection and exclusivity using the patent process. We tied our price to sales, and we set a minimum, and they found that affordable, so we were on. Except they wanted to change it later on. But anyway, their specific target segments were explained to them, and they expanded them and said, no, we think we can do a bit more than this. So when we did our income projections, it was focused on getting them to break even, which turned out to be 4 months. So most of these products you look at and say, oh, okay, it's going to be 10, or say 10 months, maybe 2 years. These guys were done in 4 months. So we also had our due diligence ready to go. So if I now talk about the leverages, the number one point on this, how Mark's leverages work for them. I'm not going to go through all the leverages, but just show you the 14 leverages we work on to show how we did this to cost their advantages, which didn't cost Mark any money, but gave them immediate uplift and reduction of risk. Now, the last one, there's 15 here, because 14 of those are leverages. The 5th one, non-cash acquisition later, which really just was a reciprocal first right of refusal to buy out. We did that for a reason, because we know that they want to be able to control things. And as it turned out, they wanted to exercise it before we did the deal. Now, just to talk about one of those leverages to give you a sample of it, use existing channels. We knew that they had an existing channel into pharmacy chains, into GPs, where they had products which when you buy one, you would buy the other. So people would buy product A, and then they want this product B to go in there. So we were confident that they could increase the average sale value simply by offering them a separate product, which was complementary. So that was just one, without having to find another market. They already had an established channel for it. So we knew just on that one alone, we were going to make some money. We were going to reduce their risk beyond what our asking price was. So let me show you how we modeled that. So we went through, firstly, we felt that they needed to spend about $400,000 on testing and packaging for the formulation. They actually figured that that was more than that, but that was okay. We felt that they might spend about $250,000 on marketing costs to add it to their current range. We also knew that they had to get the packaging right and put this into pharmacy chains, as well as get it registered into FDA for GPs to recommend it. As a product line, it was going to cost them money to do that. It was already FDA approved, so it wasn't going to be that much money. We also knew that there would be a royalty cost for what their sales were expected to be for the first year. We estimated that to be about $380,000 royalties based on 6% of wholesale. It wasn't going to be upfront, but they're going to have to pay that 90 days in arrears each quarter. And then finally, we also saw further research for other applications of this. So they could find other applications which would expand their amount that they would pay on royalties, but that was fine. Now, the big leverage for them was the fact that they could make sales, and the sales would far exceed what they would spend on getting this up and running. And because there was no key money involved in this, it was just $350,000 or $380,000 when the time came, or $350, whatever it was going to be, yeah, $350. So, or $380, sorry, in royalties. So in case like that, what we wanted to do is to make sure that they would offset that with sales, because then they could generate the profits and show that those profits, we couldn't define what they would be, but we had a pretty good guess, and they didn't object to that when we put it forward. So mind you, when we guess, we tell them we're making an estimate here. We think that this is what it's going to be. You might dispute that. You're free to dispute that, but tell us why. And they didn't dispute it. So no, you're pretty much right. Now, the plan versus the outcome. Where did we end up with when we started with a license agreement to get $380,000 a year in for one particular product, which was ulcers? Let me tell you, what Mark wanted out of all of this was a license unfettered just for USA. He was wanting to keep the rest and do it elsewhere. They had other ideas. He wanted to give them the naming and branding rights, give them the production rights, use his TGA and FDA approvals so they could make FDA approvals for the US, TGA is Australian, where they could use those to manufacture. They wouldn't have to have 2 years of delays trying to get those. They would have patent rights. He wanted them to defend the patent, so because they were a major multinational company, and he wanted them, they were big enough that people wouldn't challenge them, and he knew that, and they had their own patent litigation department anyway, so he said, we want you to defend it. And they thought, that's really asking us to pay for what you should do. But anyway, the whole deal was for the life of the patent. He only had 9 years left to run on his patent, and so he wanted to 9 years, and beyond that, he said, I'll give you an option to renew, and it'll be based on a separate amount, because we have to reduce it when there's no patent protection, even though it's become a secret formula. People can copy it, reverse engineer it, etc. So in terms of post-patent, he wanted to have an income stream as well. And he wanted to give them reciprocal first right of refusal to buy the project and to sell the project to him if they didn't want to use it. So he was going to give a formula for the purchase price. So at the time where, if they wanted to reciprocate a first right of refusal, we set the formula. The formula was, what was it? Future sales. It was net present value of future sales discounted for risk associated with that market, and it was across all the different markets. So we could guesstimate based on projections of other markets, so it could be global. Now, he also required that they did not ship their product to Australia, so not for sale in Australia, so he could actually continue to manufacture in his little compounding chemist store and use it for his application. And if the compounding chemist wanted to take it on for his particular area, he could keep going if he wanted to, but he didn't care. So that's what he wanted. What did he end up with? What he got was a trade sale outright on all global rights. They said, look, this is getting too complicated. Why don't we just give you a price? They gave him a carve out for Queensland in perpetuity. They said, you can run that. We don't care what you do. We won't sell it into that particular state in Australia. In fact, there was a lot of mirth when they were told that there's over 5 million people living in a place called Queensland. Go figure. First right of refusal if he sold that, and that's actually come to pass. He's actually decided that. He's in the process of selling his practice now, and he put that up for sale to them. They took it, rolled it in. It wasn't much money because the patent's already gone. He could purchase their formulation, which he did do. They added preservatives to it. He was buying it in a tube instead of as a paste in a jar. And as a result of that, it was a whole adhesive squeezy tube, had a different name on it, but he could use it, and he branded it. He wasn't selling it to anyone else. He just kept it for himself. And now they've got the rights to sell it anywhere they want. So he wanted some upfronts. If it was going to be a trade sale, they offered cash. They also offered equity. So they were saying you can have shares, but most important, they said you can have options. And we negotiated the options over 5 years based on him or that project achieving the estimated projections that they were giving. So what we said was over 5 years, we think you can grow it to this, and this. And if you try hard, if you don't try hard, we want to know why. But here's our formulation to get those options, to own those options. And they saw that as risk-free for them. So they did it, and he was able to clean up on those options. So he was basically buying into this multinational public listed company in the US. Those options were over 5 years. They were performance-based, and that was their performance, not his. He didn't have any say in the product after that. And they honoured those, and it went quite well. He's still got his hospital exclusivity for what he wanted, and he's now sold that. So the balance was offered to them. He's about to retire. His practice is up for sale actually this month, and that's why we haven't got him on our Q&A here today, but I'll answer any Q&A questions you have for this at the end. So that gives you an idea of what he ended up doing. I can't give you the price. It was quite significant. Now, if you wanted to do a license, what do you need to make this work? Firstly, you need to have the rights to your IP. They may need to be unfettered. You can't have partial rights. You can't be using someone else's rights and then try to on-sell it because you'll get circumvented. It's just a waste of time. You need to have the optimum commercial model. If you haven't worked out how that's got to be done, you've got to change that. Our optimum commercial model for that particular project with Mark was actually changed by the licensee, who then turned out to buy it, because they could see probably 5 or 6 or 7 other products that we couldn't see. They didn't tell us about them. They never have, but still they found it. We've got to have our industry research done. We've got to have our approvals in place, everything. But we need to know everything about the players and everything about their products, because that is how we're going to get our value and how we're going to map that commercial model for their series of products, which is important. We also have the pricing, costing, and sourcing information ready to go. We need to show them that there's layers of margin involved for everybody, all up and down the levels, the layers of the commercial model. So you're not getting your cut and they're not getting their cut with other people having to do this for peanuts, because that won't work. You need to have completed your 1041. We help you do that. You don't have to have done that before you start, but if you're going to do a license and choose a license as an option, you need to know who the top 10 players are going to be that you're going to target. They've got to be from the industry or the market, and you need to know what their risks are and what their rewards are going to be. And you need to be able to dedicate between 4 and 9 hours a week to get this done. Licenses don't happen on their own. They don't happen in a vacuum. You can't just hire someone, go get me a license and I'll pay you a fee. That doesn't work. People just don't work. So it sounds all really good to go and get that done. It doesn't happen. So how the Academy helped him, or Mark in this case. Firstly, we have 4 points, 4 elements or pillars of our program. First one is our online learning. We had to teach him to throw out everything he knew about licensing and focus on what actually happens for commercialization. And so he did that, sitting down in his own time, self-paced learning, online videos, case studies. He had access to templates, checklists, all the things he needed to be able to bring this to market. So once he understood all of that and he had a good handle on it, we then did our commercial modeling for him. We said, okay, who are we going to approach? How is this going to work for them? How's it going to work for you? And let's build the model so we can show them. We did that. It starts with 244 questions. It blows out to about 500 data points on a mind map. We print that out in A0 or A1, and you can place them on the wall. You can see your entire project in one glance. And that's important because we're going to be, through the life of the program, we're attacking that with a Sharpie and a highlighter, making sure we're getting greater clarity as you're moving towards your destination. The destination, of course, is the one core significant cash generating transaction that you've selected. Now, after we've done our commercial modeling, it won't happen unless you do it. So the doing is all part of this. We jump into the trenches with you as part of the Academy. We're working with you. We worked with him. We worked one-on-one with our call-out, our individual one-on-one group call, individual calls. We also did our group calls. We also did our project status review meetings where we attacked his mind map to make sure that we got everything done. So, and he also had out of the commercial model, you get an action plan, a task list that might have 200 points on it to be done over 6 months. And you have to implement those and you allocate them. They're fully costed, they're fully sequenced, and they're allocated to one or more members of your team to make sure it gets done. So we're now implementing that. We're chasing you on it. We're also running a group call with a cohort of 6. So we put him into a group of 5 others, and he helped others. They helped him, and everyone worked together. What it meant was when he was working on his license agreement and learning all about licensing, he was able to apply his skills for trade sale from someone else on his on their project. So he embedded those skills, and what it meant was when the trade sale, a licensing agreement turned into a trade sale for him, he was able to say, well, that's pretty easy. I'll just take it on. Done. So it gave him a far better grounding on all 6 steps of the commercialization process rather than just what he was focused on. And finally, tracking and measure. Nothing will change unless you trace it and track it. So we do that. That measurement is important. We do it regularly. We make sure that everybody is tracked and traced all the way along. You're called to account every week. You're also, you can't afford to be standing still. That's why we have those reach out calls where you can get one-on-one with me for 30 minutes and you can book that within and be talking to me live within 4 hours to 48 hours. To make sure your project keeps moving. So all of that is all part of it, the way the Academy did it for him. And they get all the full structure for the path to market and their help and the guidance. Now, why this worked for Mark was pretty easy. He knew what he wanted to achieve, and we all worked backwards to make sure he achieved it. So he started with the end in mind and worked backwards. And we changed the end in mind at the last minute. That was the client's decision. And he went along with it. He thought that was a good idea, because he still got what he wanted. Basically, get to have everything he wanted, and he's also made a sale. We mapped out the entire process in the workshop, so he knew exactly all the steps he was going to take, and he pushed it from there. We modelled from the online case studies, and so he was able to see how it would do, how people have done it in the past. We showed him how to identify his top 10, and then we calculated for the top 4 all these leverages. We spent a bit of time on that. He helped with that. And at the end, he understood why these leverages were important to them when they didn't cost him anything. We used the 12-point pitch framework to make sure that he absolutely told the right story. In the end, he asked us to dress it up and make it look good. We did that for him. He put the whole pitch. He did the pitch, but we were there with him. We showed him how to walk a trade show to get the right parties to find his top 10. As it was, he ended up going with somebody we already knew. So, and that was fine because these people were pretty keen anyway. He did test runs with his pitch with the cohort of 6, and they critiqued him. They were pretty savage, but at the same time, it was all good for him. When he did the pitch, he was very clear and concise. The other party, which were used to very high tech pitches and that would last for 2 or 3 hours, got through this in 30 minutes and thought, wow, that's pretty good. We're interested in that. It's all about the product. It's all about us. So they were pretty keen on it. So it worked very well for him. We also were able to, because he planned out his next steps, we were ready to go. He had his due diligence all in the bag. We were able to map out the next steps for them and start the process